Hi, my name's Nikki. I'm the Obsessive Bookseller, and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing a young adult version of my Read, Burn, Hoard series. I figure I'm just sitting on these books. I haven't touched many of them in years, and I want to kind of pay the same careful attention to these that I've been giving to my adult sci-fi fantasy stuff. And if nothing else, even if I don't read a whole bunch of them, maybe I'll be willing to let go of a whole bunch. Right now, the collection is very much maxing out its shelf limits, and if I bring in anything new, I don't have anywhere to put it. In fact, I have a short stack of books that I've purchased since that I can't fit in. And I do still buy them occasionally. There are a few auto-buy authors for me, like Sanderson, Rochelle Mead. But the days where I pick up just anything random that I can find at the book outlet are long gone. I've stopped doing that to myself. I've mentioned this before, but I did an experiment recently where I finally figured out that one of the reasons I wasn't enjoying young adult as much now as I was before is not just because of repetition and getting sick of the same old tropes. It's because I switched to audiobooks because they are such quick reads. I can have an audiobook done in a day or two, and I'm finding even if I speed things up, I still am not enjoying the audiobooks as much as when I physically read them. And I think it's because of the narrator. Like, all of the narrators sound the exact same to me. It's the same, like, 20-something woman trying to sound younger and having a very, like, bubblegum voice. Either that or a really dark and moody woman with this very soft and careful delivery of everything because she's just too humble to get that invested in what she's saying. Anyway, so this project is probably going to take me a little bit longer than my other one because I am going to be physically reading all of the books that I pick, and I don't have a lot of free time to physically read books. Even now, I'm going to pick my new shelf, mostly so I can get started on the evaluation process and see what books I'm going to burn. I don't anticipate being able to actually physically read any of these for about a month or two. Which is okay because my patrons voted and they would rather see me tackle my Project Sci-Fi first, so that is what is currently getting priority. But anyway, I had some time today, so I went through and labeled all my shelves and got this really old container to contain the drawing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure out what shelf I'm going to be working on first. And we have shelf number 8. Okay, so most of my read collection is down, eye level, where I can see everything that I've read and loved. And then I start the shelf count kind of at the bottom, and then it goes all the way up to the very top. Can't reach those, and then kind of works its way back down to the top shelf. So shelf 8 is the uppermost left-hand corner, and it's also the only place where I have things stacked horizontally, so it's going to be hard to pull those out and evaluate them from here. But I do see some good titles in there, so let's go take a look. Okay, instead of just telling you, why don't I show you? So most that you can see along this area is red, and then this strip at the bottom is unread. And then I carried the section up here alphabetically going down, so shelf 8 is right there. Okay, sorry about the slightly shaky camera, but what I'm looking for initially here are books that stand out as ones that I've been really wanting to read for a while. Prey, that one has caught my interest. I think it's kind of like an obstacle course, vie for survival type of thing. The Gilded Cage, which I'm not even sure is YA, to be totally honest. And then this one looks like a really cute read, The Ghost and the Goth. I've had these for quite a while. And then everything else is kind of meh. I think Diabolic has gotten a lot of good praise, so I might try that one. But most of these I've been hanging on to for ages and ages, so I'm gonna have to do some research. And I have as much time as I please, because this isn't a scheduled series, much time as I want to kind of figure out what I want to do. So I will update you next time I have something to talk about. Hello. Sorry about the awful lighting. I normally don't film when it's close to dusk, but I had an epiphany and I wanted to share it before I kind of lost my thought process. So it's the end of a really long week, and I was just sitting down to read, and I'm like, you know, I really should make progress on my next project for kind of getting through my young adult stuff. So the book I landed on reading was Diabolik, and I sat down with it, and I'm like, okay, so my patience for YA has been waning lately anyway, and of all the ones on my shelf, like, this is the most promising one within that given range, but it's not the one on all my shelf that I'm most interested in reading next. And so it occurred to me that treating this project like I do my adult unread section, I don't think it's going to work. The difference is the adult section, everything in there, even if I end up not liking the book, I'm still excited to read it. With YA, it's very hit or miss. So what I think I'm going to do is go through my entire collection of unread YA and pick out 10 to 20 books that I'm excited to read. And then from that pile, pick things to try and kind of go that route. Not only do I think it'll add variety to the type of projects that I'm doing, but I think it'll improve my reading experience considerably, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, I bet this is going to be a really good book, but I'm not in the mood to experiment with YA. If I'm going to read stuff, I would much rather start with the things that I'm super into. And I was also going to do a burn section of this feature where I figure out what I'm going to unhaul. But I mean, just glancing at the section, I can already tell you I've got some good ideas on which ones I don't think I'm ever going to read. So I might do an entire video dedicated to pulling out the books I know I don't want and letting those go. But in any case, I'm going to take a few minutes, go through my entire collection, and pick out the high priorities. And from that, I'm going to pick my first read. This feels much better. Okay, this is much, much better. Out of everything I own, these shelves that you can see right now, I've read everything from, and these bottom two shelves are unread, and then everything up here is unread. So I went through and pulled just the ones that I'm actually excited to read, and this is the short list. There are a couple of series in here that I've already started, so I've got like the next book in the series that I need to read, like for Dragon Watch and the Dragon's Lair, and then the next Body Finder book. So a couple that I've read already, but most of these are new to me series. And let me see how many I have. I have 18. Okay, this is awesome. I have 18 books here and 19 sections. So this little jar that I made to tell me which section I'm going to read next, I'm going to transfer to the books. So all of these little stickies that I put up, I'm going to bring down and assign to a book. And then I'm going to pull from a jar and read the selected book. That sounds like a lot of fun. So let me get that organized, and then I will pick my first book. Okay, worst lighting ever, but everything is labeled. I decided to leave number 19 in here, either in case I come up with another book that I want to add to the mix, or if I get it and I haven't added one, I'm going to use it as like a freebie, like I get to pick whatever I want from it. I am actually really excited about this. When I was setting up for trying to do this as a regular Read Burn Hoard, something just wasn't working. And that's one of the things that I really love about being creative and kind of allowing myself to go with the flow, is that I end up with ideas and new ways of doing things that I just, can get really excited about. So we're going to pick our first book. Okay, the first book I am reading is, my finger out of the way, number 9. And that is a book called Paranormalcy by Kristen White. Okay. I had a friend, an old coworker, who absolutely loved this book. It's the reason I picked it up. But one of the things that sounded most interesting is it kind of has a good infusion of magical creatures. I have the entire trilogy, so I'm going to see if I can just kind of plow through the whole trilogy this month. And that way I don't have any unfinished series kind of hanging over my head. So, all right, this is cool. I even have a signed copy. So yeah, I have been stalling on reading these forever. So I will update you next time I have an update. 24 hours later, and I'm very satisfied with my decision to change things up and how I was going to run this particular series of videos. So I have in my hands one that I've been really excited to read for years, and just out of the gate, you know, some of the stereotypical things that drive most of us crazy in young adult books, like she's beautiful and capable, absolutely perfect at everything she does, and already there's hinting at a very cringeworthy love story. However, the core that I've read so far is that she works for a society that kind of hunts down and tags dangerous paranormal creatures. I'm all about that. I love the world building aspect. So hopefully I got all the cringy stuff out of the way at the beginning, and now we can move into the fun stuff. I'm expecting this one to be a little cheekier, but you know, I'm in the mood for being forgiving on this kind of thing. I did try the audio. I borrowed the audio from the library. It was available immediately, and I listened to about 3 seconds of it before going, nope, nope. See if you can find a sample. The voice in that one is quintessential what has been driving me crazy in young adult audio. So we are going the print ebook route. But just taking a moment to talk about strategy a little bit. Like, I love reading strategies. I love coming up with new ways to make reading more fun, constantly thinking of challenges and things. But it's one of those things where for every couple things I try, only one pans out. So there is no harm in trying new things, and if you find it's not working, like a challenge isn't fun anymore or the system isn't working, don't be afraid to just drop it and try something new. Because, I mean, everything about reading should be fun. And so if I bogged myself into the challenge that I set initially for the Read Burn Hoard, I think I would have felt really bogged down and discouraged, and I wouldn't have any fun content to share because it would have felt like a chore. But just being willing to eat crow and say, well, that's not going to work, and kind of change things up, like I've got a whole shelf there now of things that I'm really excited to dive into. And I plan on running that system until it's no longer fun, and then we'll try something else. But the purpose of it is to read more books that I physically own, let go of the ones that aren't working, and make room in this library for more things that I actually value. A full third of my library is made up of YA books. I really need to start either reading or downsizing them. It does always help me to have kind of an end goal in mind, and I've got a whole shelf of romance novels kind of up above me where you can't see, and they're just kind of in no man's land. I need to go through and do a series on like completely abolishing most of those in there that I don't think I'm ever going to read. But I think as far as permanent placement, I think it would be really cool to make room in my young adult section to put my romance stuff at the very top, because I want to keep a couple of them. And right now I have 0 room, but I don't need to be hanging on to all these young adult books when I know I don't want to read most of them. A lot of them were picked up before I got sick of YA. A lot of them were picked up on bargain at like Book Outlet or at work, and yeah, I'm just hanging on to them because I have a harder time getting rid of these than I do stuff in my adult unread section, oddly. And I think part of it's most of them have covers, and most of them I paid a pretty penny for. Anyway, so that's the current end goal, to read and get rid of enough that I can move my romance stuff over. I think it's a good goal. Anyway, I'm going to read this one for sure, and then depending on how fast I finish it and how excited I am about the series, I may try to tie up loose ends and just read the whole trilogy so that I'm not having any open series lingering, because that's been bothering me lately. Or I'm going to pick another number from the jar, maybe put the second book back in the same place, number 9, as this one was, and refill the jar and pick again, and whatever I pick is what I read. And that way, eventually, I'll get to that second one. So, I don't know. Just depends on what sounds like fun. Hello, I'm here with another Paranormalcy update. So I'm about halfway through this right now, and I gotta say I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. I think part of the reason I'm not enjoying it is because the premise promises a whole bunch of different supernatural creatures, so I was looking forward to the kind of spice of life and variety. But it seems to have narrowed its focus down to just the fairies. And of all the supernatural beings that I could be reading about, the Fae are my least favorite. And the ones in here are, they're just kind of mediocre. I've read better. So what I thought I would do is show you a couple of books that actually do Fae really well, that I enjoyed a lot more than this one. So far, no one does it better than Marissa Marr in Wicked Lovely. She sets such a beautiful atmosphere, otherworldly feel, great characters, just a cool plot. There wasn't enough substance in the plot to sustain a whole series, I thought. So it's a 5-book series, and I was interested in the second one, but the third, fourth, and fifth just kind of were meh for me. But if you treat this as a pretty good standalone, like, this is a cool book. Much better representation of the Fae, in my opinion. Wings by April Lynn Pike. This one does a really good job at world building, and it's a lovely story. There's a conflict in it, but more it's one of those feel-good, really beautiful tales, and I thought the 4 books, all 4 of them, held their own pretty well. So if you want something with fairies, but you want it to be just a tad more lighthearted, this is a good pick. An adult urban fantasy pick, Stormborn by Rochelle Mead. Rochelle Mead is mostly known for her Vampire Academy series, but she's one of my all-time favorite authors because she does so many things well. She has this series and then the Succubus series that are both for adults. And the Succubus one is one of my all-time favorites. But we're talking about the Fae today, and this one is really cool. It's like a portal urban fantasy, if you will. She ventures into the realm of the Fae and kind of has to navigate the politics of their court. So if you want good fairies, but something a little more robust than a young adult series, this is a really good one. And finally, Hex Hall by Rachel Hawkins. What I'm missing most from Paranormalcy is the institution. I wanted a really cool feel of the location, and I thought that would be a really integral part to the story. This doesn't have to do with the Fae, but it has a lot of supernatural components, and the school is where it's all at. The overall plot was a lot more interesting in this one. The paranormal creatures and infusion was awesome, and the love story was better. So yeah, one of the best paranormal young adult books I've read for sure. Back to Paranormalcy, it's clear that there are a bunch that I've read that I've liked a lot better than this one. I'm going to keep plugging away through to the end. I've had these books for so long, I feel like I kind of need to read them, which is a weird compulsion. But the fact that it's just kind of meh right now means I probably won't be continuing on with the second book directly after like I was anticipating, so we'll see how it goes. Hello, I'm here with a final Project YA update. So I finally finished Paranormalcy by Kiersten White, and this one had a lot of problems for me. All of the selling points of the book for me were the paranormal aspect. Getting to learn more about the creatures, this institution that hunts down and tags them. I was hoping for a lot more time spent with that and her actually out hunting, like in the field. But from the moment that the insta-love was introduced, that's all her world was about. That became the focus of the story. And then it kind of shifted to this weird, not in the institution anymore, but just wanting to go to a regular old high school. And like, if I wanted to read a book about someone going to a high school, I would have picked up a different story. I really wanted the paranormal aspect to this. It also had a pretty heavy focus on fairies, and of all of the interesting creatures in here, that was probably my least favorite type of paranormal to follow. Yeah, it just didn't work for me across the board. There was one particular aspect that I thought was really interesting, and it kind of unfolded throughout the whole book, so that's the reason I finished it, and that's probably the reason I'm going to eventually pick up the next book. But I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to take the second book and put it in the place of this one in the lineup, and it'll be up to the roulette on whether or not I pick it. So overall, my first dive into Project YA, I wish it had been a better book. This one is kind of like a hallmark of a lot of the reasons why people don't like YA. It had a ton of the tropes, but you know, can't win them all, so I'm looking forward to the next pick. And considering how long it took me in this particular installment to get everything going and to figure out what I'm doing with the project, I'm gonna leave it at just that one book, and then the next video you'll get, I'll probably read more than one throughout that vlog. So for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for following along with this new venture on this channel, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.